Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 96, with the return of Meg Sunga. So super excited to have Meg back. She's such a great guest, super fun, great conversation we had here, kind of picking up where we left off last year when she was on the show. She has since last year, she finished the season, the inaugural season of the podcast that our good friends at Presence were producing, and has also launched her own podcast in retrospect. So definitely go check it out. Very awesome storytelling on her show that she's helping to facilitate, exploring the stories of queer and trans people of color. So just really genuine, authentic, and really relevant stories there. So really appreciate her committing to that work full time. You can support her work with the links down in the show note for her Patreon. But just really glad that we were able to have this conversation and you all are able to benefit from it as well. So after this brief message from our sponsor, this is episode number 96 with Meg Sunga. This episode is sponsored by Degree.me, a one-stop college research tool for students. If you work for a college or university, you'll want to learn all about their ability to connect you with the right students at a budget-friendly price. To find out more, please visit degree.me/HEG. All right, I am super excited to have you back onto the show, Meg. It's been about a year since you were on last season, so excited to catch up and hear what's been going on for you. Certainly, it's been, just for the entire world, a pretty eventful year. So why don't you just kind of start there? We'll link out to your prior episode, but since it was roughly September 2019 when we last spoke. So kind of what's been going on for you and your professional journey, and what you're working on, and we'll dig in with some of that stuff as we get going here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you, Dustin, for having me back. I can't believe it's been a year. Let's see. Last time we chatted, I was just starting a new podcast for Presence, the higher ed tech company that we had met through. Mm-hmm. And oh gosh, that was a whirlwind in of itself because I was still learning all these things and I was kind of in the thick of it really when we had our conversation. And then fast forward to spring semester. Spring was like, okay, we're going to get ready for conference season, a big NASPA. We're usually a big presence at all of these national conferences. And then COVID happened. And so whatever I was working on for any of those things just fell to the wayside, as pretty much everyone's lives did. Mm-hmm. And I started... presence-wise, I was working on some webinars. Personal-wise, I started really ramping up to launch my own podcast, which we'll talk obviously here in a second. But what happened was I had found myself finding more and more passion for my side hustle, the new show, and also getting ready to make a move to Orlando this summer. And so all of these things were kind of already pushing forward. And then the pandemic happened. And then the most recent protests with Black Lives Matter happened, and the death of George Floyd, and the protests with Breonna Taylor. And all of this combined in a whirlwind of life. And I just had to sit down and figure out, what do I really want to do? Because I think I alluded to in our last conversation, and if anyone knows my social media, it's I'm a very big social justice advocate and activist. Mm-hmm. And with everything that was happening, and my show is, for queer and trans people of color, specifically the guests that I have on. It's not for just that audience, but that's the focus of my guests. I just felt like it was my time to take that leap and to move into a space that I could really commit every single day to the work I do. Even if it's a creative work, it's still fulfilling and it's still providing a purpose and a platform for people's stories that need to be told. And I kind of was like, it's time. So I left Presence in July and jumped headfirst into podcasting. And it's exciting and it's scary. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's just so important. I think because I think for me, I would get drowned in sort of the bummer that is the past 3.5 years and everything. if it wasn't for seeing so many people who are like creating content and just like, letting their voices be heard and all these things. So it's just like, it's so awesome that you've also kind of embraced that and just saying like, now is the time, if now more so than any other time, to do this, and like feeling like inspired by this moment, and not, like you just weren't willing to wait, or, couldn't wait. And so many of the things that are happening now are, so long overdue. And it's just so many, yeah, like so many things happening at once that I'm sure, there's other folks out there that have, I think, been embracing that energy of just sort of like kind of finding our truth or our calling or something in the midst of the chaos. Like it kind of can sometimes, in a weird way, give some clarity, because we're all kind of like resetting and stuff like that. So
right.
Yeah, we'll focus there. I mean, yeah. So you're kind of diving in with this podcast. So before we get too far along here, just give folks kind of the picture, how you want to frame it, of just like explaining more like about this show. And, I've listened to some episodes, and it's just super awesome, like really great kind of conversational feel to it. But yeah, I'd love to hear your words of how, it's kind of all put together in your mind.
Oh, thank you. Sure. So my new show is called In Retrospect. That is in retrospect, with a Q at the end. So QT, not a C. It's very intentional. It is a digital dialogue on the life lessons and lived experiences of queer and trans people of color. So every single guest on my show holds identities, specifically queer and or trans, and then are people of color. I'm a queer person of color myself, and I identify as bi and Filipina. And I also hold these identities of, I mentioned earlier, being an activist, but specifically for me, a representation activist, as well as a retrospective storyteller. So the way that I talk about those two things is I'm very adamant about how do we get more people who look like me or look like other marginalized identities or identify as other marginalized identities in media spaces. So music, television, cartoons, literally everything that we consume. Like, how can I find a young Asian girl, as the heroine, who gets the boy at the end of the day? Or how do I find a ballerina who, isn't white? Like, these are things that I want to be able to see, and I would love for kids to be able to see, because then it just reaffirms that you can do anything you want to, right? No matter, where you come from or who you are. And then the retrospective storyteller piece is that I love just talking about old shit. Like, I just love nostalgia. I love, my head and my Spotify playlist is just full of 90s music. And like, I just love being able to think about who we used to be and the time frames back when, things were different, or how things have shaped us, and the experiences that we went through have shaped us. And so all of that combined is essentially in retrospect, and that we can, kind of process and unpack our experiences together and see how similar we are, but also how different, as well as celebrate just queerness in its everyday moments. Like, we aren't having gay pride parades every day, as much as that would be fun. But it's just a wonderful way to just hear queer stories in a way that's just, it sounds normal, which it is. And I just don't think that we have enough of it. And especially queer people of color, because as much as I love the queer content that's out there, like RuPaul's Drag Race and I want to say Pose is the next one. It's like, those are the two dichotomies, is that, we have spaces that are just very predominantly white queer people, and then things like Pose come out, where it's, trans Black women, trans Latinx women, and it's like, wow, like, we can have both of these stories exist. Cool. I want to be able to create more of that. So that's my show.
Yeah. And it's really great, like very conversational, feels really like genuine and authentic. And I guess I'm curious, like, did you think a lot about like the style or the method that would like best serve that goal that you had? Because it certainly could just be like a round table, like,
Mm-hmm.
just talking about stuff, or just like a very like formal and, almost like journalistic kind of feel to it, or something where you're still trying to tell stories. So like,
Right.
but I think like it feels very genuine to you, like your energy, so I think that you made a good
Thank
choice. I
you.
don't know if it was at all sort of a dilemma for you, but like, I guess just like that creative process, did you like think about like, I mean, like the title or the vibe of the show a lot, or did it just seem to kind of come very like naturally to you?
Oh my gosh. I want you to know how hard I rabbit holed with the intentionality behind this show.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went deep. So originally the show was going to be called Dear Younger Self. And the concept of um writing a letter to your younger self, or what would you say to your younger self, isn't new by any means. And the inspiration for me actually came from higher ed, because when we would do activities with like student leaders or RAs or really any students, sometimes we would do the activity of like, here kids, write something to yourself, and we'll give you this letter at the end of the year so you can see like how far
Mm-hmm.
you've come. And I loved that activity. I just thought, like, how cool would it be to be in a show? So in retrospect, kind of started around that idea of like, just what would you say to your younger self? And then from there, it built out, it grew a little bit more intentionally with, okay, let's structure it in 3 parts. Let's talk about the first parts. Let's do story time. Let's, hear and listen to guests' experiences, and let them lead the way. And then let's take a break, because depending on what they bring in story time, it could be heavy, it could be a coming out experience that wasn't as nice, or it could be hilarious and funny, really just whatever. But then the next section is the kit and caboodle, which is our nostalgic pop culture section. And that's where we get to just dive into like, favorite movies, music, crushes, all kinds of, pop fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we end with a letter. And so the letter is the wrap up of everything, because they usually do, and this is, mind you, this is not me, this is all my guests. I wish I could take credit. They usually touch upon things in story time and in the pop culture segment that they wrap up in the letter. And I made the very strategic decision not to like unpack the letter with them like on air, like, hey, like let's talk about it. It just, you get to say whatever you want to say, and the audience just will receive it however they want to receive it. And I think that's so beautiful. So with the show, I made sure that it felt like it had a natural like ebb and flow with it. So I'm glad that you say it's conversational and it feels organic and authentic. I'm like, yay, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
But also even the name. So I think the name is my most proud moment, because I originally, like I said, called it Dear Younger Self, and I had it vetted it. I had vetted it. I don't even know language anymore. I had gotten it looked at by a lawyer, and she was like, I just don't know if this can be like copyrighted or like protected legally, Meg. Like, you might have to change the title. And I was like, ah, crap. And I already knew that I wanted to focus my audience or my guests as queer and trans people of color. And so I went down this rabbit hole, and I was watching a show on Hulu. I think it's canceled now. I'm really sad. I just learned that it's not getting renewed. Called High Fidelity, and it was
Mm-hmm.
the remake of the movie. And she was just talking, and she had used the word in retrospect, like in the in like one of the episodes of the show. And I was like, I love that word. And that's essentially what we're doing, is like thinking about things retrospectively. And then I was like, but people, and I Googled it, of course, and a couple podcasts pop up, and I was like, oh shit, like I can't do it. Like it's not what I can do. But I realized that if I'm going to focus, this as a queer podcast, can I change how I spell it? And so I swapped out the last C to a Q, and it just so happens that the last 2 letters of the title is QT, which is queer and trans. And for a shortened abbreviation, when we talk about queer and trans people of color, we talk about them as cutie POC. So I thought that was really great and on the nose. And so I
Mm-hmm.
ran with it. And then for those who get to see the spelling, it's in, and then retrospect is spelled RE with a colon, and the RE specifically is a call to, like in regards to. So talking, when we're talking about the show, talking about your younger self. So the intentionality behind all of it was exhausting, but just like it was like serendipitous almost. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was really long. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. I mean, it's like cool to hear more of like people's creative process and stuff. Cause I think just like, oftentimes, yeah, like a lot of thought goes into it. What might seem like just sort of simple on, on the face. But yeah. And then obviously like that, classic, just like misspelling a word or something. It's like, oh yes, we can get the domain and like do whatever,
Mhm.
it's like, it works out that way of like, cause yeah, it would have been such a bummer if it's like, oh, this is such a great name, but I can't use it in a way that's like exclusive at all.
Right.
So that's great. So then, you are really going all in with this show, and you've done, kind of crowdfunding and like all these sorts of other supports and stuff. So I guess just talking about that, like, obviously you're super passionate about this work and everything. So I guess just talking through that, I don't know if you had maybe kind of a fork in the road moment where you're like, well, maybe I could do this as just like a side project, but certainly, there's, opportunities and avenues that you could go all in with it. So I guess just talking through that decision-making process a little bit.
So I tell people this all the time, pre-COVID and pre-leaving my job, the game plan was, hey, we're going to work at, Presence for another year. We're going to do a slow ramp up, a side hustle of sorts to creating this show. And then life happened with COVID, and then the summer happened, and it's just like, how do we reframe the plan? So in June, I had already planned to come out with the show in June. This was, oh God, my timeline when I originally made it was back in last October for this new podcast. I was like, all right, June 2020, I'm coming out. And how apropos and on the nose that phrasing was. It's like, I'm coming out with this new show. And I knew that I had to, when I had made that decision that I was going to leave, I knew I had to reframe and rework the coming out to not only be, hey, this is my show. It had to be, hey, I'm leaving my job. This is my show. How can you support me? Not only, like liking and subscribing, but like, how can you support me monetarily? Because I'm taking a big leap of faith and I have no idea where I'm going to land. But this is what I want to do. I'm literally cashing in all my chips. And so I had worked with my mentors and some of my friends, and it really kind of happened in an organic way because one of my friends, she's my episode 2 guest. She worked at a company called iFund Women, and they do crowdfunding specifically for women. And I was like, wow, that's right up my alley. Let's do that. And so that's how I kind of started the crowdfunding campaign and then launched my Patreon in conjunction with that. And so I realized that this is the way that people can absolutely support creative people like me with just momentum and like actual backing. And so I just decided to do that. And I don't say that it was, again, the main plan, but it had to become the plan because just the way that life rolled out. Would I do it differently? Maybe. I might change it up next time around. But for right now, I'm moving forward in trying to, increase my Patreon subscribers. I'm taking marketing and business classes on the side. Like, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that this is actually a business and not just, something that I enjoy doing but can't sustain me. And I want to make sure I'm learning and doing everything I can possible to make this sustainable.
Yeah, it's so interesting with that of like, creating some sustainability for you with it. Cause it could, like, all things considered, and I tell people this a lot when they're talking with me about like they're curious about starting their own show. It's like you can do it on a shoestring budget. You could like just use your headphones, like come with your smartphone. They have a mic, it'll sound okay. You can like put things up online in free places. Like you don't have to pay for like hosting or anything like that. But it's like
Right.
the more you put in, the more you're going to get out of it. Like better mic, better
I believe
quality,
that.
streamline, your upload processes through like a hosting provider and like, grow your audience quicker or just have slicker branding, whatever, like people are going to be like, oh, wow, like, I'm just scrolling looking for like a new show, you get really good branding, something distinguishing, like, again, like your unique name, like, those sort of things, like it's going to stick out to people. So,
Right.
I think this certainly, like the alternate universe of this show could be like, well, it's just a little side project and that sort of thing. But like, I kind of sense and feel it's almost like you want to do this right. So you're going all in and you're like really trying to put in the time and the effort and the resources. And
Yeah.
it's refreshing too. I mean, like, cause I kind of like, geek out about stuff sometimes with like, with marketing, and I've taken some like, stuff through Coursera and different platforms. Like there's
Yep.
so much good content out there. And certainly again, like you want to do this right. You want to do it in the best way that you can. So you're, taking advantage of those resources out there. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really great. Um,
Thanks.
well, and I guess then, through this process, so you decided to make that leap of faith and everything. And, you're several episodes in at this point. It's the time of the recording. So like, what have you learned through this process of like choosing to go all in on your own and, get the support and stuff of your community and your audience and everything? So like, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about like, I don't know, podcasting or anything like technical, I guess,
Yeah.
like, what has that learning process been like for you?
Specifically in regards to podcasting, one of the things that I've learned, and I think you'll understand this because you do this too, is you learn the things you say in
Mm-hmm.
response
Mm-hmm.
to certain things. Like people have different sayings, people have different ticks, and one of the things that someone pointed out to me, I'm just so embarrassed about it, but I can't because it's just what I do,
Right.
is whenever someone says something just like profound or just beautiful, and I'm all into their story. I'm kind of I forget that I'm a host. And I'm just like listening to them, and they end their sentence. I I go, wow, oh, I love that. And it's just like this emphatic, like, yes, oh, I love that. And I hate that someone pointed out to me because now every time I say it, it's like, oh, god dang it, Meg, like you did it again. But it is what it is. It's fine. I love it. I joked that I'm gonna make like stickers with different sayings on it that I do because it'd be funny. But yes, the podcasting world has taught me that I, anyone can do podcasting. I 100% believe that it is one of those like uniquely equitable media platforms, like creative platforms. But the high quality storytelling that I think that I look for in podcasts takes time, and it takes time, and it takes energy and resources and support that your everyday person may not have because they have a family or they're committed to a full-time 9 to 5 job or other things in their lives. And so I'm in this unique situation where I'm like, okay, I don't have a job, traditional job anymore. I have time to do this, and I have my resources to do this. I'm going to do it well because I have no choice. So that's what I learned about podcasting. What I learned about myself is that I have wild imposter syndrome and do not, oh gosh, I'm 30 now, turning 31. I do not know how I operate in normal situations anymore because I genuinely think imposter syndrome is going to pop up like every time. It's like, what qualifies me to do this or talk about
Mm-hmm.
this, or, who is telling me that I should be here. And it's been such a battle to knock that annoying thing down. And I'm still figuring it out. And I think the last thing that I've learned is that this is always when you love something so much and you want to do it well, you're going to put all of your heart and soul into it, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. I think that for me, I need to give myself grace in this process because there are going to be moments where I don't want to do all the editing and I don't want to do the transcript or the show notes or all the things that come along with podcasting. But that doesn't mean that I'm not giving enough, or that I'm not enough. I think a lot of the times we equate our worth as humans with how much we do and how hard we work with our productivity. And I think that's not fair. So I think those are the things I've learned in this process for myself is, take your time. You're going to say, oh, that's wonderful, or oh, that's lovely all the time. And that's okay. And it's okay if you don't, want to do the editing on certain days. Like, you can take a break
Mm-hmm.
and you're still great. So
Yes. Um,
that's what I've learned.
yeah, no, I mean, there's so much good stuff there because I definitely like, I mean, yeah, I've been doing this, I mean, between different shows for over 6 years. And it's like, I had to take like a break between the shows just to like, you know, cleanse my palate kind of thing, and just like almost feel excited to
Mm-hmm.
do it again. And even now it's like, well, you know what? I'm going to try it at the very least every other week. Like every week was kind of a beast. And, only just with
Yeah.
like the current state of the world did I like for 3 months straight go through like a bunch of bonus episodes. But it's like, I'm also framing these as bonus episodes because I'm not doing this all the time because it definitely gets draining with a newborn and like everything else. So, but
Yeah.
it was like, well, it was exciting. I was only doing that because people reached out and like, they were eager to share out some, the stuff that they're working on. But yeah, like it's hard. And there are times
Yeah.
where, I'm like, oh man, that episode maybe didn't catch on as I thought it did, but, or I thought it should. Yeah, I think there's definitely doing this for a long time. And I think, I've ridden that roller coaster of emotions of like, my only value is in my output. Like, if nobody listens to my show, then I'm like a worthless piece
Mm-hmm.
of crap, like, but it's like, no, I enjoy doing this. I know people listen and enjoy it. They have told me so. So it's just like, it is what it is. And for me, like whatever I'm expecting out of it is like, you know, I think that's also important for people because I think if you're just doing it as a side project, but you're expecting it to be the biggest show on the face of the earth, and it's like, well, I mean, you have to put in a lot of work. Like it deserves a lot of work if you want
Yeah.
to do it right, if you want it to be like, this big deal or whatever, or if you want to make money off of it. So, for me, it's like anything that I get coming into the blog or any of these things, it's like, it's just, and I always say this, but it's like, it sounds gross. Like, oh, it's just gravy and the cherry on top, which of course, not at the same time. These are two different meals that I'm eating with extra on top. But like, so yeah, like I think, yeah, just what resonated with me, like, what is your goal? So like that you're determining kind of like the amount of work that you're willing to kind of put into it. Like you kind of have to like equate those things and then just like, kind of keeping a level head of not, entirely investing your emotional well-being into content that you're creating, because I think you might
Right.
get something that catches on and you're chasing that high and you're like, well, maybe I should just like do that again. Or I should just, I don't know, like you just get so mixed up versus just like follow your heart. Who do you want to talk to? Like, what are the stories that you want to tell? Like, what is the content that you want to
Right.
create? And all those sort of things. But yeah, I mean, I definitely like, especially like having a newborn, like this is a lot of work and figuring out how to
Mm-hmm.
balance it. So I appreciate you sharing all that. Yeah, I mean, and I guess, as you're hitting your stride and getting, episodes going here, is there anything that you could tease, anything that people could look forward to for the podcast that you have coming up?
So I just recorded 2 episodes this week, and they both identify as male. One is my friend who is a Colombian American who was also a Navy vet and also has a history of drug addiction and also identifies as HIV positive and has a lot of depth in his story. And it's also, for me, was really fun to have a conversation with because it was our first person who was not born in America. And so he brought the multicultural aspect of, 2 nationalities in the space. And
Mm.
so we unpack a lot about what it was like being queer, not only in America, but in another country, and just how those 2 different cultures, what those expectations are of queerness and of masculinity and of, who you're supposed to be. And I thought that was just a really fun and just different story that I haven't been able to listen to yet on the show. Um, and my guest that I actually interviewed today, he talked a lot about family as well. He is a Black pansexual individual, also in higher ed, and he talked about body image and body positivity, but specifically how, and then this is where I love that this is a higher ed show, how him getting involved in cheerleading and how he was a cheerleader at college at NC State helped him accept him for who he is. And so we got to hear the, transformative power of college and of college athletics. And hearing him tell that story was just really beautiful because I actually hadn't heard that yet. I knew he was a cheerleader, but I didn't know all of that. And so for folks listening, these next 2 episodes are definitely touching upon masculinity in different ways. But both are, providing their own unique takes on obviously their lived experiences. So hopefully that will be interesting for folks. And of course we get to, talk about pop culture stuff too. So all of that's fun.
Great. Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds like really great stuff to look forward to. And I guess, and what I'm excited for too, because I don't know if this is sort of like in the back of your mind, and certainly it's like the imposter syndrome for sure. But like, thankfully, I've not had like a wholly negative experience with this. But like, as you're establishing like the stories that you want to tell and the people that you want to talk to, like, I don't know who it might be in your case, but like, who the like reach guests are, when you're like, ooh, you know what? I would love to talk to like this person, whoever. Because that's what it's been like reassuring to me is recently, like, and again, they're like reaches very much purely in my own
Sure.
instance. I'm sure other people would be like, oh, I don't even know who that is. But like, I'm excited to see like if you like, I don't know, like, because I know you're obviously like super active on social media about like you're kind of getting into the weeds of your process of like who you're talking to and that kind of stuff. So I look forward to seeing if you're like, oh my god, this person said yes or something, like that's like such a cool like milestone when you kind of like can like put that notch in your belt of just like, oh yeah, I get the that first person who felt like kind of a reach. That's always like really fun. Yeah.
I have that person in my mind.
Mhm.
And it's so funny. So I have a list. I use Airtable to like organize all my
Mhm.
podcast stuff. And I have a list called celebrity guests, dream guests. And ironically, my reach guest isn't like Hollywood superstar. And the way that I've tiered it is like I have Hollywood superstars and I have like people who've been on Netflix and then like influencers.
Right.
It's like a weird tier. So, but the person I'm most excited about that I would die is his name is Jerry, and Jeremiah Harris, full name, was on the Netflix show Cheer,
Mhm.
and Jerry is just like enthusiasm personified. Like he loves and supports everybody that is on his cheerleading team, and everyone just gives him praise for just how supportive and wonderful he is. Just a positive human. And Jerry's gone through some stuff, but has just been recognized over and over again for just having a beautiful spirit and just being very kind. And I would love to be able to talk to Jerry, especially after this, recent episode that I recorded where my friend was a cheerleader. So I was like, oh, and that now my brain is like, let's get Jerry. Let's make Jerry fall in love with this show so he can come on and tell me all of the things. So
Putting that energy out into the universe. So we'll see what happens. But
yes.
well, then I guess yeah, as we're kind of winding down, I'll sort of start to because I feel like this, I don't know, however it might resonate. We can kind of combine the next two questions of the stuff I always like to ask of like what you're geeking out about, like what's
Sure.
grabbing your attention. So I don't know if it's sort of like maybe the stuff that you've been taking and like you said in like marketing business stuff that is resonating, or just other like books,
Mm-hmm.
podcasts, documentaries, other stuff that you'd want to recommend that we could link out to in the show notes.
I'm currently geeking out on I signed up for a podcast conference that is virtual. It starts next week called Podfest, and it is my first podcast conference, and I'm super excited to learn all the things that I need to know and the things that I thought I knew about podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that, monetization, just different professional development stuff. So it'll be really exciting. And also to just connect with other people who do this. I think you, Dustin, are one of maybe 3 or 4 people that I know that do podcasting full time. So it's just exciting for me to like grow that like friend group out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other things I'm geeking out on is I'm currently watching The Umbrella Academy. I'm on episode 6. I love this show. I never read the comic. I really probably should because everyone who are like super fans, stans, really love Umbrella Academy. So I need to dive deeper in that. I'm rewatching Lost.
Mm.
And I hadn't watched Lost since I was in like high school. So I really am honestly just watching it as a new person, as if I've never seen this show before. And I will say, for anyone who's never watched Lost, you need to. It is so good. It is so, so good. And it has a lot of like time traveling things that you don't expect in the show at all to like pop up later in the seasons. And so that's a little teaser for anyone that's interested. And I guess the last couple things would be I'm still on Animal Crossing, or not even still, but for those of y'all who've joined,
Yeah, I mean, it's never going away, I
never going
think.
away. Animal Crossing has saved my life and has helped me through the pandemic. So I'm really looking forward to watching more fireworks and swimming in the ocean. That's really what I'm geeking out on.
It's very appropriate. I have like a backlog of games I need to play because like I've just I mean, yeah, 'cause I think I'm like justifying it because it's like, well, no, I have the time. I'm just at home, but also like, well, I'm not spending money on these other things, so I can finally just buy a bunch of games. And I'm like, well, I don't even have that much time. Right now, I'm just gonna have like a stack of games I need to play through. But
Yes.
yeah, I'll reinforce Lost, one of my favorite shows of all time. And I think I rewatched it with my wife sometime in the past couple of years. But we like did it was the first time for her, but rewatched for me. But it had been since
Right.
it like ended that we watched Breaking Bad and then the follow up like epilogue movie El Camino. So we just did that
Nice.
recently, and then I feel like we might do something else, but yeah, it is almost like enough time because like with the Breaking Bad, like I remember watching it when it ended. So it was like a similar thing of like, well, that's been like 6 years. Like like when you like revisit it after so many years, you're coming at it in such a different place. And there's like, well, I remember like the signature milestone moments, but like how they got there. And then I like just appreciated the like artistry of it more, because I wasn't having to like follow the story as much. So that's that's all good stuff. And I need to watch Umbrella Academy. That's like personally, I think I'll watch that like on my own time. I don't think my wife will be interested, but
I hear you on that. And honestly, I think those are some of my favorite shows are the ones that you can just watch by yourself. Like it's for you. It's always good to have a couple of those.
Yes. Oh yeah. So I mean, you kind of are alluding, I guess, to a little bit of this of just sort of like, the stuff getting you through, these trying times, unprecedented times, as we all say. But like, how do you stay, motivated? Like, what's kind of certainly like you're going on a bold new adventure here during such unprecedented times and everything. So how are you kind of working to keep yourself well, keeping yourself motivated, and all that? What are you doing there to kind of keep yourself motivated?
I've never been shy of telling people about my mental health journey and struggles. And one of the things that I found very helpful, almost like I don't want to be dramatic, but almost life-saving throughout the pandemic has been this group called Peer Support Space. They're based out of Orlando, and it's a nonprofit, and they do peer-to-peer mental health support. And so in pandemic times, what that's translated to is they do daily calls Monday through Saturday, 2 calls a day. And it's just you log in and you can talk about, your day. You can talk about things you're struggling with. Sometimes different days have different themes. So it's like Fridays are show and tell, and then topic Tuesday or whatever. And each call has different people on it because you just never know who's going to call in. But as someone who didn't, not didn't, but like at the time didn't have a therapist or didn't have the money for the therapist, this was just such a really wonderful way to support that for me. And I just found a group of people that were ready to listen and ready to cheer me on when things, with the podcast are going great, or, when I decided to leave my job and, was going through that tough time of like reconciling what the next step was. And I was panicking. They were there for that too. And so I really am glad that I found that network of folks, and encourage folks to check them out. Their peersupportspace.org is their website. And they help people all over the country. They're based out of Orlando, but they work with people literally everywhere. And they're my family away from my family, which segues to what I'm really looking forward to in the next 2 weeks, which is seeing my mom. I'm driving to Houston, trying to be as COVID and socially distant safe as possible, but I'm going to see my mother and my father and my siblings and spend a couple days in Texas, just reconnecting. And it's been a minute, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely needed. I think we've all been, dealing with all this and getting to be a bit burnt out and fatigued. So I think I would encourage everybody to start thinking about, as much as a lot of people I know are being obviously super safe. It's like, you gotta like be a part of your communities. You gotta be a part of, your families and stuff like that. So I know it's been helpful for us, especially as new parents, to, with appropriate precautions and preparations and stuff, like just bringing people in to share, our newborn with, and
Mm-hmm.
just like, it helps to just be like, oh my gosh, like some sense of normalcy, and like, even just for like a brief little time. So I'm very glad that you can have some of that time. And
Yes.
yeah, definitely something to look forward to kind of, rejuvenate you, keep you
Yes.
motivated, keep you moving forward. So,
Yes.
um, yeah,
Great.
such good stuff. Thank you so much for your time and all that you shared. And we'll have ways to connect with you and the work that you're doing and everything that you mentioned down in the show notes as usual. But yeah, just thanks again, and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dustin. It was always fun as always. I'm just happy to hear your voice, A, because you have such a great podcast voice. And B, to just catch up because this time last year you did not have a baby. So exciting things on your end too. So
Yes.
congratulations for you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.